Kimberly?
Emily.
Oh, Emily. Hi, I'm Misty.
Okay, so tonight's subject matter is spiritual knowledge. The thing is, the one thing that attracted to me to the macrobiotic way of life way back when I started in 1975 was it was called the way of life in harmony with the order of the universe. And that was very attractive to me. That's what it was called. The whole macrobiotic shtick was much different in those days than now. It's really become so contracted down to just diet. Whereas when I started, it was a whole cosmology and philosophy of life and way of eating, way of living, way of thinking that's just gone down the tubes. I mean, people just don't think like that. It's become so narrow in its scope that people are actually trapped by it. They're trapped by this whole nutrition. Am I getting my vitamin B? Am I getting this? Why is there arsenic in the rice? All that totally irrelevant. It's just irrelevant. When we started out, because Patty started about a year after me as my wife. I met her in Boston. Nobody ever talked about nutrients at all. We didn't even come up. I mean, the whole thing was, if you get the balance right, you just don't even have to worry about your nutrients. You're going to get your nutrients. It's not even a concern. And we especially paid no attention to vitamins. I mean, none. And they refused to sell vitamins in the store, in the macrobiotic store. Would not sell them. Eventually they capitulated, because the fact of the matter is, well, I'll give you an example. I was here, me and Patty moved out here in '81. We moved from Berkeley. And I started doing my thing, and I got a request to go and give a cooking class in Walnut Creek at a natural food store there. And I took my pressure cooker on the bar tray, went out there and did the cooking class. And after I'd given my class and talked about all this, the owner of the store, and he had 3 aisles, double-sided aisles, just stacked with bottles of vitamins in his quote-unquote natural food store. And said, everything you say, you're the best guy, you're actually the best teacher that's ever been here. Everything you say is actually perfectly correct. But the fact of the matter is, if I did what you said, I would be operating out of a shoebox. So, now, I started I got into Rudolf Steiner in 1982, and it was there that I discovered what this order of the universe is. And I'm going to just give you a kind of like an outline presentation of what the order of the universe is and who is involved, including us and the plants and animals and the rocks and so forth. So now to presage that, there's the prologue to the Gospel of St. John in the Bible, New Testament, and the translation there is not correct. Steiner has given the proper translation from the original Aramaic Greek in which it was originally published. And it goes, the first 2 sentences are, "In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was a God. And nothing that was made has been made without this God." Okay, so the Word refers to this God, and this God is Christ, who is the Son of God. And nothing that was made without Christ. In other words, Christ is the orderer of the universe, fundamentally. I mean, basically, he is the order of the universe. But we need to go do some outline stuff here. So the first thing is, we are, before I draw that, the human being is both a cosmic being as well as an earthly being. Now when we look at each other, when we see our physical body, physical eyes, we are not seeing the real deal. The physical body is a gesture by the mineral kingdom that we are in the presence of a spiritual being belonging to the 10th hierarchy, i.e. the human being. And we really need to cognize that. Okay? This whole thing is, when you look at the scientific explanation of how life began, you gotta just totally trash it. I mean, trash it. Because, you know, the Big Bang Theory, the whole theory of evolution, that we're nothing but a bunch of naked apes. There was a book written like that, right? Desmond Morris back in 65 or whenever it was, caused a huge stir at the time. Like we just crawled down from the trees. No, that is not correct. The fact of the matter is that the human being is a divine creation, and we are actually invisible to our physical eyes. We actually do not see the actual person who we are looking at when we look at our physical bodies. What we're seeing is an image rendered in the physical-chemical body of the human being as she or he stands before us. And that in itself is a healing thought. When you try to remind ourselves, no, it's not easy to do, that when we look at each other, we are seeing a gesture by the mineral kingdom whether we're present in the presence of a spiritual being, which is a human being. Because there are actually 13 hierarchies of spiritual beings, from the highest to the lowest. The lowest being the minerals. The rocks are the physical body of a spiritual hierarchy. Now their etheric body and their astral body and their egos are not in this realm. All that is here is their physical body. And then the plants, on the other hand, which is the next hierarchy of spiritual beings, is made up of, in this realm, the etheric body and the physical body. So when we look at a plant, the outer form of the plant just shows us the spiritual, the spiritual imprint of this etheric body expressed in the physical realm of the, you know, the rose or the oak tree or the baobab or the sequoia, or my favorite, the Bristol cone pine. You know how old that thing is? 5,000 years old. They have a Bristol cone pine forest down there in southern Nevada. We're going to go there one day, I hope. Yeah, we're going to Death Valley next week. So, and then animals, what distinguishes the animals from the plant is the animals are constituted of a physical body. Now when I talk about, so you have, and this is kind of, it makes you sort of have to kind of, you know, like, how should I put it? Straighten out our brain. Because when everybody talks about the physical body, they're referring to the body we see, touch, and feel with our hands and the warmth coming off and what's not. That's not the real physical body. That's the physical chemical body. But there is a real physical body, but it's totally spiritual. And then there's the etheric body, which is the body that gives. The etheric body is also called a formative life body. It animates, and essentially the etheric body is like the body that organizes the structure and the function of the organs and tissues and the blood flow and so forth and so on. And it's very, very active. And then that's separated from the astral body, which is attached to the etheric body. And the astral body is where we have all the thinking and feeling and emotions and attitudes and memories and dreams and visions and whatnot. that's in the astral body. In other words, the brain is not the organ for thinking. It's the sense organ for thinking. In other words, thinking, the activity of the brain isn't what causes thinking. The activity in the brain is a result of thinking. You know, the nerve endings and all the flashing neurons and whatnot. That's the result of thinking, not the cause of it. So we have to change our understanding has to undergo a radical transformation so that we start to see each other and the world as a physical expression of the activity of spiritual beings of which we are one, among many. There are literally, in this room right now, there are hosts of spiritual beings right now, present here in this room. We just don't see them. And so, and this is the transition. I mentioned that we're going through a major transition in human spiritual development, because this is not our only life that we spent on earth. We have spent many lives on earth, and we've all been through what I'm going to describe in a minute. But the transition is this: up until, say, 1879, is that we could coast along on the support given to us by the spiritual hierarchies. So above the animals, above the human, which is what distinguishes the human being from the animal, is that we are individualized. You know, so there's a species of animals, like there's bovine, there's the feline. So there's a group soul. The animals have a group ego. So there's the elephant spirit, there's the lion spirit, there's a mouse spirit, and so forth. But if you understand the behavior of any one single member of an animal species, you understand the behavior of every member of that same species. So all lions, generally speaking, behave exactly the same way. You know, the same thing with antelope. You know, when I grew up in Kenya, I grew up on a ranch and there was tons of animals there, and I spent my boyhood tracking animals. So when you started to do that, you would notice that they had certain behavioral patterns that were totally predictable. So if I wanted to go and see, say, impala, I knew, okay, if I want to see impala, today I have to be in such and such a spot in such and such a time, and just wait. And they'd show up, because I knew their behavioral pattern. So now the thing is, with a human being, ideally, we're all unique. And we're totally unpredictable. You know, we should be totally unpredictable.
We should be.
We should be. Well, we're not, of course, because we think our thinking has become automatized, you know, automaton thinking, because of physical science. Materialistic science is a process we had to go through, because, as I said, we were coasting along on the support, which is still given to us, but not in this regard, by the spiritual hierarchies above us, like the angels, archangels, archi, and so forth. They essentially were directing us. And then they said, the time is up, you've got to start to mature spiritually. And so we were, so to speak, thrust out of the heavens, and we were said, okay, now you've got to start thinking for yourselves, out of your own resources, out of your own spiritual resources. So scientific materialism came along because that was a way for us to start to examine the world around us objectively as an event taking place, whatever we were studying, in which we had no role to play at all, other than as an objective observer, subjective objective observer of, you know, the natural phenomena. So the natural sciences arose, and we all developed, you know, out of that developed physical sciences and material sciences, which have been a tremendous boon to us. I mean, you look around here. Right, that started around 1380.